大家好，欢迎收看非同凡响，我们一起来续大事。这2天的大事呢，我想应该集中在奥巴马身上哈，因为奥巴马沉默了几天之后，其实他对这个事情他一直都不做出正面的反应，但是他现在开始反应了哈。那他透过他的办公室的发言人怎么说呢？他说，出于对于总统办公室的尊重，就是现任总统的尊重，奥巴马的办公室呢，通常不会对于白宫发出来的荒谬言论以及持续不断的错误讯息做出回应，但是这些指控已经足够令人愤慨，理应做出回应，因为这些荒谬的指控非常的可笑，它只是为了转移视线焦点的无力尝试。这个是前总统奥巴马的发言人，叫做派崔克·罗登布希。可是我看白宫发言人，现任的白宫发言人，他昨天的这场记者会其实就在几个小时之前，他协同了川普的国家情报总监土耳其加巴德一起开了这场记者会。那我们做了翻译，但是就法律的部分呢，我觉得值得来衍生一下哈。所以我不做太多的评论，但让大家分段来看白宫的这场记者会，由大家自己来做判断，究竟奥巴马是不是已经站在被告席上面？因为通常被告在提出本来是犯罪嫌疑人，但是当他提出正式的回应的时候，你从他回应的方法其实可以看得出来，他是不是已经站稳了被告席。我们先来看白宫发言人对于整个问题的总结。
Over the past few days, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has unveiled shocking new evidence that former President Barack Obama and top aides in the Obama administration conspired to subvert President Trump's 2016 election victory and undermine the democratic will of the American people. While publicly pretending to engage in a peaceful transfer of power, in private, former President Obama went to great and nefarious lengths to try to sow discord among the public and sabotage his successor, President Trump. The new evidence released by the Director of National Intelligence, who is here with me today, confirms that the Obama administration manufactured politicized intelligence, which was later used as the justification for baseless smears against President Trump in an effort to try to delegitimize his victory before he even took the oath of office. The truth is that President Trump never had anything to do with Russia, and the Russia collusion hoax was a massive fraud perpetuated on the American people from the very beginning. And the worst part of this is Obama knew that truth, and so did all of the other corrupt officials involved in this scam, including former CIA Director John Brennan, former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, former FBI Director James Comey, former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, and many others. Director of National Intelligence Gabbard's report further confirms what we already knew. There was no collusion, no corruption, except on the part of Barack Obama and the weaponized intelligence agencies at the time. The Russia hoax was a blatant lie, all ginned up by Democrat political operatives that were signed off on by then President Obama and leaked to the news media to launch a years-long witch hunt against President Trump and his first administration. Allies of the president, including his own son, Donald Trump Jr., were disgustingly smeared as Russian assets, and some even had their lives destroyed because of this vicious lie. The president's first 2 years in office had this fake distraction hanging over it, and endless resources, time, and political capital were spent having to debunk these lies from the highest levels of our government. Now, nearly 10 years later, thanks to the declassification of documents by Director Gabbard, the truth has finally come to light. And this truth vindicates President Trump, his family, and his many allies and associates who were smeared with defamatory lies. President Trump was right from the beginning about all of this, and we are grateful that justice can be served. Now, we have even more damning evidence implicating those who tried to sabotage a duly elected president and did grave material harm to our republic. Thanks to additional important work done by CIA Director Ratcliffe, Committee Chairman Rick Crawford over the past few months, a newly declassified 2020 report prepared by the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, which DNI Director Gabbard has declassified, found that the intel community did not have any direct information that Russian President Vladimir Putin wanted to help elect President Trump in 2016, and in fact, Russia was actively preparing for a Hillary Clinton victory. But at the unusual direction of Barack Obama at the time, the intel community published implausible intelligence suggesting otherwise. Why? To sabotage the incoming president. This is truly one of the greatest political scandals in American history. And reporters at legacy outlets, some of which are sitting in this room today, like the New York Times and the Washington Post, were ridiculously awarded Pulitzer Prizes for their perpetuation of this hoax. It's well past time for those awards to be stripped from the journalists who receive them. It is not journalism to propagate political disinformation in service of the Democrat Party and those in the intelligence community who hand over out of context and fake intelligence to push a false political narrative. I will now pass it over to the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, to speak more about all of this, and then we will open it up for questions afterwards. Tulsi, thank you for being here. Thank you.
白宫发言人的总结呢，我觉得最主要就是集中在什么呢？集中在对于川普本人以及他周边的人的迫害，尤其是对于川普的儿子，后来恐怕导致了他的离婚。这个事件我觉得对于川普整个家庭都是一个伤痛，因为通俄门本身不只是对川普个人的指控，而这个指控到底是什么制作出来的，就要看本来国家情报它必须要怎么做呢？它必须要不能够经过人为的判断，把有利跟不利的证据全部呈现，然后累积了一定的程度之后，再来判断是不是应该要完成一份报告。结果奥巴马在他的指示底下，当时他的所有的情报单位，这些情报头子结合了希拉蕊以及当时拜登也在那个办公室里面，他们一起在椭圆形办公室开了这场会议。明明情报不足，甚至情报的来源显示完全相反的内容，他们剔除了这一些情报，只纳入了 Steele 这个报告完全不可信赖、没有可靠的讯息的来源，然后就做出了一份所谓看起来有信心的情治报告。我们来看土耳其加拉德第一段的说明。
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. At President Trump's direction and with the support and coordination with the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Rick Crawford, today we've released a declassified Oversight Majority Staff report that was produced in September of 2020. The stunning revelations that we are releasing today should be of concern to every American. This is not about Democrats or Republicans. This has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic and American voters having faith that the votes cast will count. There is irrefutable evidence that detail how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false. They knew it would promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true. It wasn't. The report that we released today shows in great detail how they carried this out. They manufactured findings from shoddy sources. They suppressed evidence and credible intelligence that disproved their false claims. They disobeyed traditional tradecraft intelligence community standards and withheld the truth from the American people. In doing so, they conspired to subvert the will of the American people who elected Donald Trump in that election in November of 2016. They worked with their partners in the media to promote this lie, ultimately to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump and launching what would be a years-long coup against him and his administration. We're here today because the American people deserve the truth, they deserve accountability, and they deserve justice. The records that we released on Friday that were ODNI records, Senator Chuck Grassley's release on Monday of what is known as the Clinton Annex, which was an appendix to the Department of Justice Office of Inspector General's 2018 report, as well as the House Intelligence Committee's majority oversight report that we're releasing today, all come back to and confirm the same report. There was a gross politicization and manipulation of intelligence by the Obama administration intended to delegitimize President Trump even before he was inaugurated, ultimately usurping the will of the American people. I'm going to go over the key findings from the House Intelligence report, which investigated the claims that were made by an intelligence community assessment ordered by President Obama and published in January of 2017. First, Putin's principal interests relating to the 2016 election were to undermine faith in the U.S. democratic process, not show any preference of a certain candidate. In fact, this report shows Putin held back from leaking compromising material on Hillary Clinton prior to the election, instead planning to release it after the election to weaken what Moscow viewed as an inevitable Clinton presidency. In the January 2017 intelligence community assessment that President Obama ordered, John Brennan, who was CIA director at the time, and the intelligence community intentionally suppressed intelligence that showed Putin was saving the most damaging material that he had in his possession about Hillary Clinton until after her potential and likely victory. The report goes into great detail about the information that Russia and Putin had on Hillary Clinton, which included possible criminal acts like secret meetings with multiple named U.S. religious organizations in which State Department officials offered, in exchange for supporting Secretary Clinton's campaign for the presidency, significant increases in financing from the State Department. They also had documents that showed the patronage of the State Department to State Department employees who would go and support Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. There were high-level DNC emails that detailed evidence of Hillary's, quote, psycho-emotional problems, uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness, and that then Secretary Clinton was allegedly on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers. Then CIA Director Brennan and the intelligence community mischaracterized intelligence and relied on dubious substandard sources to create a contrived false narrative that Putin developed a quote-unquote clear preference for Trump. Brennan and the IC misled lawmakers by referencing the debunked Steele dossier to assess quote-unquote Russia's plans and intentions, falsely suggesting that this dossier had intelligence value when he knew that it was discredited. The intelligence community excluded significant intelligence and ignored or selectively quoted reliable intelligence that contradicted the intelligence community assessment's key findings on Putin's alleged support for Trump. Including this intelligence reporting would have exposed the ICA's claim as implausible, if not ridiculous. The intelligence community assessment omitted reliably sourced information, such as how some Russian intelligence officials were quote-unquote planning for candidate Hillary Clinton's victory, while others assessed neither Trump nor Clinton would respect Russia's interests. As was reflected in the ODNI documents that we released on Friday, multiple intelligence community assessments released in the months leading up to the November 2016 election concluded that Russia had neither the intent nor capability to impact the outcome of the U.S. election.
这段的说明就是最初奥巴马他们怎么样在大选结束之后2016年的12月开了这样的一个会议，结果统整出来的资料不仅没有显示什么普丁要去支持特定的候选人的这样的一个倾向，甚至俄罗斯的情报界认为说，不管是希拉蕊或者是川普当选，最后他们两个人都不会对于俄罗斯有什么好的。而且俄罗斯的情报判断认为说，最后当选的将会是希拉蕊，因为那时候整个美国的主流媒体以及民调，大部分的民调，错误的民调都显示说当选的是希拉蕊。而正确的民调有没有？有，我们在去年都介绍过了，他们的准确度一直持续贯穿的每一届的选举。可是主流媒体永远用的就是他们所主义的那一些假的民意调查，希望能够左右选举的结果。所以既然俄罗斯的情报显示他们认为希拉蕊会当选，那如何能够影响让川普当选呢？而事实证明，川普当选对普丁来说并不是好消息。尤其在这一次的选举，普丁甚至公开说他支持谁？他支持卡马拉，因为卡马拉的笑声让他觉得很愉悦。我们继续看土耳其加巴德他所说的这个整个政变，这个阴谋，叛国的阴谋，到底关键在哪里？
On December 5th of 2016, the FBI and ODNI gave the House Intelligence Committee its first post-election classified briefing, in which there was no mention of Putin aspiring to elect Trump by either agency. The Presidential Daily Brief, drafted on December 8th of 2016, stated that no Russian or criminal actors impacted vote counts. This document was pulled just hours before it was to be published due to quote-unquote new guidance. If it had been published, it would have been briefed to both President Obama and President-elect Donald Trump. On December 9, 2016, a National Security Council meeting was called to gather President Obama's senior national security officials, which included CIA Director Brennan, then Obama DNI James Clapper, Susan Rice, and others. Following that secret meeting, DNI Clapper's assistant sent an email to the intelligence community with the subject line, POTUS tasking on Russia election meddling, tasking ODNI leaders to create a new assessment per the president's request. The House Intelligence Committee Oversight Report that we released today reveals that, quote, unlike routine intelligence community analysis, the intelligence community assessment was a high-profile product ordered by the President Obama. It directed senior intelligence community agency heads and created an intelligence community assessment limited to just 5 analysts using one principal drafter. This is not something that occurs in the normal path of producing an intelligence community assessment that reflects the views across the intelligence community. The production of this intelligence community assessment was subject to unusual directives directly from the President and senior political appointees, especially the former director of the CIA, John Brennan. The House Intelligence Committee Oversight Report also shows how later that same day, on December 9th, Brennan ordered the publication of quote-unquote substandard reporting on Russian activities, which had previously been withheld from publication of prior assessments because the information was judged, quote, to have not met long-standing publication standards. Some of the information later used in the Obama-ordered assessment over the objections of veteran CIA officers was, quote-unquote, unclear or from unknown sources. The Intelligence Committee's Oversight Report reveals that CIA Director Brennan overruled senior CIA officers who challenged the Obama-ordered intelligence assessment, stating, quote, we don't have direct information that Putin wanted to get Trump elected. Yet, the Obama-directed assessment was published on January 6, 2017, which explicitly stated, quote, we assess Putin and the Russian government aspired to help President-elect Trump's election chances, when possible, by discrediting Secretary Clinton and publicly contrasting her unfavorably to him, end of quote. The CIA and FBI, then led by John Brennan and James Comey, expressed high confidence in this judgment, while the NSA expressed moderate confidence. Yet, as the report we released today shows, the ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment, did not cite any report where Putin indicated helping Trump win was an objective. The opposite is true. With regards to the Steele dossier, we now know that one of the source documents that the Obama administration used in the creation of this intelligence assessment in January of 2017 was none other than the discredited, unverified Steele dossier. The House Intel report states, quote, contradicting public claims by then CIA Director Brennan that the dossier was not in any way incorporated into this intelligence assessment. The dossier was referenced in the intelligence assessment's main body text and further detailed in a 2-page assessment annex. John Brennan lied, and he denied using this dossier in this intelligence assessment that President Obama ordered because he knew it was discredited. It was a politically motivated, manufactured document. He directed senior CIA officials to use it anyway. CIA officer told the House Intelligence Committee staff as they investigated this, quote, the director of the CIA, John Brennan, refused to remove it, and when confronted with the dossier's many flaws, responded, quote, yes, but doesn't it ring true? Even the bipartisan Senate Select Committee on Intelligence report published in 2020 criticized the FBI's handling of the Steele dossier, noting its completely unverified nature and purposeful sidestepping of intelligence community procedures in its use. Now, President Obama, Hillary Clinton, John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, and others, including their mouthpieces in the media, knowingly lied as they repeated the contrived narrative that was created in this January 2017 intelligence community assessment with high confidence as though it were fact.
关键在于这个整个事情是由奥巴马自己签名直接指示的， 而情报圈本来有一个怎么样做出情报的一个标准的作业程序，要有多少人参与评估，要有多少人来撰写报告。那在什么情况之下觉得累积足够的情报，要怎么样客观的完成这个情报？因为情报的来源应该是完全没有偏见的，让最后看情报的人来做判断，而不是收集分析情报的人自己去做判断。这个分寸如果没有拿捏好，就是不断的造假一些假的情报，这都有标准的作业程序，但是在奥巴马指示底下违背了这样的一个作业程序。从这个阶段看起来，奥巴马应该已经稳稳的坐在一个被告席上了，而跟他共谋的人包括当年选举的希拉蕊、奥巴马的中情局局长、联邦调查局局长、国家情报总监，甚至在场旁听的拜登，到底有没有责任？因为他当时是副总统，以及后来贯穿了第46届总统选举到第47届总统选举，都引用了同样的资料，不断的攻击川普。这长达10年来的攻击，所有运用这些资料的人，是不是都应该要承担一个共谋的责任？这就包括了后来的谁呢？卡马拉。但川普的指控是针对谁？川普的指控主要是针对奥巴马。
John Brennan, as CIA director, stated in a memo to his agency staff in December of 2016, saying, quote, "There is strong consensus among us on the scope, nature, and intent of Russian interference in our presidential election." This was reported by NBC News, confirming that Brennan, along with James Clapper and James Comey, agreed with the CIA's assessment that Russia intervened to help Trump win the presidency. As Obama's Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper was tasked with overseeing the creation of this assessment in January of 2017 by President Obama, and he expressed confidence in its findings. In a 2018 interview with the Harvard Gazette, he talked about how he provided Trump with the same classified assessment that President Obama received, which included the high confidence judgment that Putin directly ordered the hacking and election interference. Clapper then went on to add, "I think they, the Russians, actually influenced the outcome." This is a brief summary of the details that you'll find within the House Majority Staff's report in their investigation into the Obama-directed January 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment that leads us to the very same conclusion that we announced in the release of our documents on Friday. The implications of this are far-reaching and have to do with the integrity of our democratic republic. It has to do with an outgoing president taking action to manufacture intelligence to undermine and usurp the will of the American people in that election and launch what would be a years-long coup against the incoming President of the United States, Donald Trump. Thank you.
川普已经走完一个非常标准的作业流程了，经过内部的调查，经过国家情报总监以及国会的调查，而国会的调查又是多数监督调查，也就是说，他有不同党派的人在这个委员会里面已经多数同意这样的一个报告的结果，也就是认定奥巴马以及他所指挥的这些人跟他共谋的这些人已经犯罪了。换言之，很清楚的，奥巴马已经坐稳了被告席的位置。我相信美国的司法部部长应该会将他起诉，但起诉不代表他一定会被判刑。而他如果被判刑，我觉得川普未必会让他特赦。尤其在可见的几年内，我们认为说，美国的总统应该都是共和党推派的代表，那么就更无可能要特赦奥巴马这一群人了。尤其是希拉蕊，他上次逃过了电油门，是因为川普不认为说一个美国前总统的夫人应该要坐牢，他到今天仍然不后悔，他当时放过了希拉蕊。可是就这个事件本身，当他看到了奥巴马的签名，以及确定了在某年某日他们在白宫的椭圆形办公室开了那样的一个高层的秘密会议，川普决定追究到底。
Mr. President, do you support the Justice Department seeking a new interview with Ghislaine Maxwell, and did you urge the Attorney General to seek one?
I don't know anything about it. They're going to what? Meet her?
Your Deputy Attorney General is reached out to Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney asking for a new interview.
Yeah, I don't know about it, but I think it's something that sounds appropriate to do. Yeah.
Do you have any concern that your Deputy Attorney General, who's your former attorney, would be conducting the interview, given your past relationship?
He's a very talented person. He's very smart. I didn't know that they were going to do it. I don't really follow that too much. It's sort of a witch hunt, just a continuation of the witch hunt. The witch hunt that you should be talking about is they caught President Obama absolutely cold, Tulsi Gabbard. What they did to this country in 2016, starting in 2016, but going up to 2020 in the election. They tried to rig the election, and they got caught. And there should be very severe consequences for that. You know, when we caught Hillary Clinton, I said, you know what? Let's not go too far here. It's the ex-wife of a president, and I thought it was sort of terrible. And I let her off the hook, and I'm very happy I did. But it's time to start, after what they did to me, and whether it's right or wrong, it's time to go after people. Obama's been caught directly. So people say, oh, you know, a group. It's not a group. It's Obama. His orders are on the paper. The papers are signed. The papers came right out of their office. They sent everything to be highly classified. Well, the highly classified's been released. And what they did in 2016 and in 2020 is very criminal. It's criminal at the highest level. So that's really the things you should be talking about. I know nothing about the other, but I think it's appropriate that they do go.
May I ask you about that, Mr. President? Tulsi Gabbard has submitted a criminal referral to the Department of Justice. From your perspective, who should the DOJ target as part of their investigation? What specific figures in the Obama administration?
Well, based on what I read, and I read pretty much what you read, it would be President Obama. He started it. And Biden was there with him, and Comey was there, and Clapper, the whole group was there. Brennan, they were all there in a room. Right here, this was the room.
那现在有一些媒体说，川普这个作为呢，就是要转移爱泼斯坦事件的焦点。但是所有的新闻本来就是一案叠一案，看哪一个事件对于民众来说是大家所关心的焦点。我认为爱泼斯坦案会继续进行。事实证明，现在司法部也开始在对于现在关押在牢里面的这个麦斯威尔就是爱泼斯坦的前女友，他们要重新对他进行侦查。川普也不反对这件事情，可是他会把更多的焦点拿来平反他自己。对于10年来的政治追杀，他势必会追究到底。而首度透过发言人提出回应的奥巴马，已经稳稳地站在被告席上了。我们下一集见。